Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
It's been interesting seeing what has gone on with the Miles Garrett situation. Because for as anybody knows nationally, nothing has changed, right? But if you're paying attention to those who are tapped in, it would appear that something has changed. Now, what do I mean? What am I talking about? Let's have a conversation about the state of Myles Garrett's trade request. Because Friday, when we all left for the weekend, we were all at a similar place, not feeling great about the Browns' ability to retain Myles. Maybe if you got some kind of great quarterback trade, you'd be able to retain him. But more than likely, it looked like you were going to have a very contentious relationship with him for 1 year and trade him in 2026 or trade him post June 1st this year. That's what it looked like, right? I wasn't confident. I felt like there was a chance that Myles just wanted to leave. But all of a sudden, Monday happens. The same day that the Browns make a ton of roster transactions is also the same day that the tone starts to change on the coverage about Myles Garrett, which I find to be interesting and not a coincidence, right? I've been paying attention to the reporting from, the traditional sources here in Cleveland, Mary Kay, Tony Grossi. For a while now, those folks have held the line that they thought it was going to be a long shot for the Browns to be able to get an extension. But this week, you're starting to hear Mary Kay say, hey, maybe an extension is something that can figure this thing out. You're starting to hear Tony Grossi say, hey, maybe an extension could figure this thing out. Again, I don't think anything's imminent. I don't think there's a contract that's about to be signed. But all of a sudden, we're hearing word of extension when it felt like 3 days ago, the Browns and Myles Garrett were an ocean apart when it comes to even thinking about some kind of extension. Consider this my what is going on, Brian Windhurst suggestion to you all, that maybe, just maybe, the Browns have a better chance of extending Myles than what we have thought over the last few weeks. And I cannot speak enough about how massive in the positive direction that development could be if it's true. If the Browns can resolve this thing with Myles, with an extension, if you're wondering what an extension for Myles will look like, it's going to be very expensive. We're probably talking about $36 million or $37. He wants to probably be the highest paid non-quarterback, and a significant amount of that's going to be guaranteed. I could care less about the guarantees in the contract, because the guarantees are going to be what makes it harder for him to get out of here if he decides he wants to be traded anytime soon. With a player like that, you want to protect yourself from that situation. So I think the guaranteed actually works in your favor if you're Cleveland, especially if you have no reason to believe that Myles Garrett's level of play is going to decline anytime soon. But that's interesting. We get to the combine today, and Andrew Berry, not really interested in talking about trades, not really interested in talking about trading Miles Garrett. He did sound interested about talking about an extension, about talking about Miles Garrett's long-term future. It seems like the Browns have not given up on this idea that they can get an extension for Miles, and they're willing to even say it publicly. That's interesting. Look, I've been saying it. This offseason will be the offseason that defines Andrew Berry. It is also one of the most difficult off seasons to navigate for any GM of any sport in recent memory. You got Miles Garrett requesting a trade, your best player, the face of your franchise, specifically citing competitiveness is why. You have free agents like Nick Chubb, who we're going to talk about hitting the market, which pose a very significant concern, especially if you're worried about the morale of the locker room and fan base versus what feels like a more technically correct move. You have Deshaun Watson flaming out, like you can't count on him anymore, right? Obvious. Deshaun Watson's not part of future planning, but you still got to pay Deshaun Watson the rest of that contract. So you got that to deal with. And you have the number 2 overall pick. And you're in the situation that you're in with the salary cap, which means, I mean, for the Browns, that means that they're going to be able to create a lot of space this year and create a team and do a lot. This is a difficult offseason to navigate. You can work this offseason, much like the Detroit Lions in 2021, push the right buttons, or the Houston Texans in 2022 pushed all the right buttons, and next thing you know, popped out a contender. That can happen if the Browns push the right buttons, make the right decisions in the draft and free agency. You can fumble this opportunity, trade your best player, have to trade more players because you traded your best player, lose franchise cornerstones like Nick Chubb, and waste the number 2 overall pick. And you can go down as fully securing the Browns back into the crater of hell that they have been desperately trying to climb out of for a very long time. But if we're looking at this job, one of the biggest things, hey, what are you going to do with Miles? How do you turn this thing into a win? Getting an extension out of Miles Garrett would be a massive, massive win for the Cleveland Browns and for Andrew Berry, right? If you want to pass the test of this offseason, getting Miles signed to an extension, well, that does that, right? Because everything about, oh, well, they're not competitive, I don't want to play there. Well, now he has reason to believe that they're competitive, right? So definitely a giant deal to retain players like Miles Garrett. And if he can get an extension out of here, which felt like a Hail Mary a couple weeks ago, but it seems like the tides are turning in the Cleveland Browns' favor to get an extension here. Now, again, it's going to be an expensive extension, but it seems like the tides are turning in the Browns' favor for that. That being said, one of the things where it doesn't feel like the tides are turning for the fan base's favor is Nick Chubb. I made a video earlier this month talking about how I feel like the Browns should work out an extension with Nick Chubb and why the Browns should bring back Nick Chubb. If you did not watch that video, my main point was this. One, I would not count out Nick Chubb's ability to be effective on the football field just because he had a down year last year. We have acknowledged that the run blocking was hindered greatly from switching offenses. We have acknowledged that Nick Chubb was coming back from a catastrophic injury to an offense that did not have NFL quality quarterback play, which made it much, much, much more difficult to run the ball. And he was coming back from a catastrophic injury. So that first year back, I don't want to read too much into. That second year back is going to be everything. And I want to at least get that out of him. I don't want to see him get healthy, have the year we know Nick Chubb's capable of somewhere else. I want Nick Chubb to get that chance to recover, get better here. Now, there is a good chance that the Browns work something out with Nick Chubb in free agency, because I don't see the demand for any running back this free agency being very high. This draft class has more solid running back prospects than can be drafted, which means the market for free agent running backs is just not going to be there. A lot of teams will say to themselves, we'll take somebody in the draft, right? We're not going to pay $8 million or $10 million for Najee Harris. We're not going to pay $7 million potentially with an incentive-laden deal for somebody like Nick Chubb, who's coming off an injury. We're going to wait and see what the market gives us, right, in the draft. And then if the draft doesn't hit, we'll revisit the free agent market. So I think a lot of teams are going to want to sign a running back if they do end up wanting to sign a running back after the draft, not before. And that gives Nick Chubb time to go out there, see what his market is. I think the Browns want to keep his number under $3.5 million. I think Nick Chubb wants to have a deal that can get him probably up to somewhere around $7 million with incentives. And that's the disconnect between the two. And the Browns are going to see if somebody's willing to offer that. Now, I wouldn't be surprised here. Well, I wonder if the Browns are going to be willing to get creative here. It doesn't sound like they're going to be. Andrew Berry said straight up, it sounds like he's going to hit free agency. I would at least want some kind of protection, some kind of ability to match an offer, right? Like maybe a transition tag or something like that, where somebody does offer him something, we can match it and retain him. I think Nick Chubb's important. I think he's important for leadership. I think he's important for the locker room. I think it's more than just what he provides as a player. And I think he's going to be able to provide something as a player going forward. I don't want to count him out. He's one of the best running backs this franchise has ever seen. And I think he deserves more than what he had, the chance he had last offseason to prove that he can be a top running back in the league still. Especially when we saw running backs his age or older, Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley, be able to dominate in the same ways that they did in their youth this last season. I don't want to be the Giants next year where we let go of Nick Chubb and have to watch him, run somebody else to contention. So I really hope they get something done with him. I think it's really risky to even let Nick Chubb hit free agency. Unless like Nick was asking for a lot of money and the Browns were just like a world apart on that, then I can understand it. But I hope that they can get something figured out, because I want 2-4 in Cleveland the same way I want 9-5 in Cleveland. So hopefully they can figure all of that out and get a deal done that's not going to be too expensive. They can make Nick Chubb happy. That keeps everybody here in Cleveland. Another interesting note from that Andrew Berry press conference. He let it slip that he thinks that Travis Hunter is a wide receiver and alluded to the ball skills. Now, I wonder if that was a slip of the tongue. I wonder if that's a genuine reflection on how he feels. I have heard similar things to that, right? Like, that's not the first time I've heard that the Browns see Travis Hunter as a wide receiver. Having Andrew Berry kind of confirm it on the podium was a bit strange, but it's been out there. It's been rumored that that's how the Browns see him. I thought that those rumors were odd because I think most everybody sees him as a DB. I wonder if that changes the math at 2. For a while, I've been operating on, hey, it's either Abdul or it's Travis. But if you see Travis as a wide receiver, I think that changes the math on what you think of him as a prospect. Because I just don't know. If he's such a better DB prospect in my eyes than a wide receiver prospect. And not saying he's a bad wide receiver prospect, but I think he's a better DB prospect, more instinctual. Most players who watch him play think he's a DB. I don't know if he's number 2 overall pick worthy if you see him as a wide receiver. DB, you can make the argument. As a wide receiver, Usually the type of wide receivers that you want to take number 2 overall, a little bit bigger than Travis Hunter, a little bit taller than Travis Hunter, right? Now, if you're talking about DBs you would take number 2 overall, Travis fits the profile. But wide receivers, not really. So do you take Travis number 2 overall now if you think he's a wide receiver? How good of a wide receiver do you think he is? Are you not as high on his ability to be a DB as other teams? That is very interesting. Because if you're going into this, and maybe the Browns are going into this saying it's Abdul Carter or Mason Graham, which could make sense. I think that makes a lot of sense. But if it's Abdul Carter or Mason Graham, you think you could trade back and get Mason Graham. So I wonder if Abdul Carter's not there at 2, does this mean that we should start preparing for the Browns to take back even a modest trade back to get out of 2 there? Or are they willing to take Mason Graham there? Or are they willing to take Travis Hunter as a wide receiver? As a DB, I don't really have problems with that. As a wide receiver, I have questions. A lot of things to think about. It's been a very interesting week so far. It's only going to get more interesting. The Combine is this weekend. It's going to start soon. So make sure you're locked in, subscribed here, hit that notification bell. I want to thank you guys for watching. Have an even better night. Peace.